In 1962, Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, and others started a committee to bring attention to the suffering of agriculture workers who lived and worked in poor conditions. It was located in Delano, California. The period between 1962 and 1965 was spent traveling around the state of California, recruiting farmers to the National Farmers Association, which Chavez was president of.
My fellow worker, come into the fold of unionism and help bring the agriculture worker into the fold of unionism.
It wasn't until March 1965 when Chavez finally drew attention from the nation. He led a pilgrimage of protesters from Delano to the capital in Sacramento. The police were stationed on one side of the road while the protesters were on the opposite side. Men who were hired to watch over the lettuce field and who were paid extensively stood close to the cops, also facing the protesters. After the march and a 4-month boycott against the Shenley vineyards, a negotiation was finally made. It was, quote, the first genuine union contract between a grower and a farm workers' union in United States history. 1966 was another busy year for the NFA. In April, they boycotted the DiGiorgio Fruit Corporation, a company in charge of a grape plantation with many migrant workers. Then, in August, the NFA joined with the Agricultural Workers Committee to form the United Farm Workers Committee, the UFW. Chavez continues his protests by fasting to promote nonviolence for 25 days. He breaks his fast after Robert Kennedy joins a number of farm workers and supporters at a mass. Robert Kennedy continued his public support of the UFA until he was assassinated on June 5, 1968. He was on his way to thank Chavez and other farm worker supporters for helping him win the California Democratic primary when he was shot in the hotel where he intended to meet Chavez. Unbeknownst to him, Chavez had left the area before Kennedy arrived. Dolores Huerta had stayed behind and stood right next to Robert as he was shot. The year 1970 marks the end of a 5-year struggle for 26 growers in Delano due to the signing of a contract with the UFW. This ending the remaining grape strike and boycotts as well as the main struggle of the UFW. The 1960 farmer strikes led by Cesar Chavez introduced and depicted the first nationwide press of the unfair conditions of the migrant workers of America. Though the majority of these workers were Latino, it is important to remember that the protesters were a mix of Filipino and Latinos. The UFW's work is important to take note of as a historical event not only for Mexican Americans but for U.S. history as well. These events paved the way for Hispanic and Mexican American rights.